my name's Maceo. I'm going to be here today to talk about as to why Big Punisher, Christopher Lee Rios, Big Pun, could be the greatest rapper of all time. Big Pun, born Christopher Lee Rios, was born on the 10th of November 1971. He was born in the Bronx borough of New York to two parents who, they were good parents. The cause of death of Big Pun has always been sad to think about, with his wasted potential that he had. When he died, he was only 28. The cause of his death was because of his weight. Pun had been overweight since he was about 18. It started then when he only weighed about 180 pounds, but between then and when he was 21, he would fluctuate up as high as 300. He'd done this because of his depression that he had. He turned to food as a way to cope. On February 5th, 2000, Big Pun withdrew from a planned Saturday Night Live performance with Fat Joe and Jennifer Lopez. 2 days later, he was staying in his hotel, and then he had to be rushed to hospital because of heart failure. He did not recover. They reckon at his death, he weighed close to 700 pounds. That's like 320 kgs. It's amazing that he was able to rap the way he did, being so big. It got so bad in life that he wouldn't eat around anybody else. But this just puts into perspective of how great Pun's time was before he went. As with many other great rappers, Biggie, Big L, Tupac, we never got to see him reach his fullest potential of what he could have been. But by that same merit, we never get to see him grow old and be corny. This either adds or takes away from his GOAT potential. I'm honestly not sure as to which one. But Pun is a very, very important rapper for multiple reasons. The first and foremost being, he was the first ever Latino rapper to go platinum as a solo act. His album, Capital Punishment, his debut album, is to this day regarded as a classic. This is something that is undisputed. The album has just amazing song after amazing song. From his iconic duo with Fat Joe and Twins, Dead in the Middle of Little Italy, iconic, to just lyrical onslaughts like You Ain't a Killer and Dream Shatterer. All of these songs are amazing because they feature Pun's signature rhyming style with multi-syllabic rhymes and internal rhyme schemes, words rhyming before the end of the sentence. As I said before, Capital Punishment went platinum. First ever Latino solo artist to go platinum. Amazing. Ahead of his time. Capital Punishment peaked at number 5 on the Billboard Top 500 and was nominated to a Grammy, losing only to Jay-Z's A Hard Knock Life. Stiff competition. The source, which back in the day when this album was made was still credible and considered the Bible by many old school rap heads, gave the album a 4 out of 5 mics. Amazing again. Speaking to the skill and the beauty with which Pun rapped. His second album that was released just after he died, called Yeah Baby. It also went platinum. It sold close to 180,000 units the first week it was released. Now, one of the arguments that Pun has against him is his lack of a catalogue, coming because, of course, of his early demise. And another argument is that the release of Yeah Baby was planned because who's going to say the album's whack if he just died? I doubt this, because Yeah Baby is just as lyrically hard, it's just as... It's basically just another capital punishment. It's covered in Big Pun's signature style. Near every song, again, is a lyrical onslaught. You couldn't stop him. And the charisma that which Pun rapped with, much like Biggie, it didn't matter that he was big. You still thought he was cool as hell, hard as hell, gangster as hell. When he was rapping about murder and jakes and stuff on the block, you believed him. He had that type of air about him, that credibility. That's something that a lot of rappers to date lack. Could you imagine Drake making a song like Twins? As lyrically hard and fast as it was? Could you genuinely believe Drake if he were to say, yeah, that's what I do, standing out on the block killing cops? No, you couldn't. That believability is something that a lot of rappers lack. Yeah Baby was also given a 4 out of 5 from the Source. Again, back when the Source was still credible. Since then, he's also had 2 compilation albums be released. The first one being The Album with the Terror Squad, selling 250,000 units. Mainly because of Pun. Because besides Joe and Pun, can you name anyone else from the Terror Squad? And then lastly, there was Endangered Species. This released on April 4th, 2001 and peaked at number 7 on the Billboard charts. Very respectable. The biggest thing about Pun, besides from his image, his charisma, things like that, was just the way he rapped. He could do a song like Still Not a Player. This is all about lust. And talking about him getting with chicks and stuff like that. And then he could go to something like Twins, or You Ain't a Killer, Dream Shatterer, The Harsh Realities of Life Are Taking Toll, Even Jesus Christ Forsake My Soul. There was something about the way that he did it that marked him as different from the DMXs and the Most Defs of the time, from the Jay-Z's and the Nas's. Because let's not forget, Pun started rapping in the 90s. This is when hip-hop was at its most competitive. This is when a lot of the greatest of all time, when you come into that argument, this is where most of them came from. And Pun stood out even amongst them. And don't sleep on his freestyle game. He's been on Hot 97. He's been with Funkmaster Flex, killing instrumentals left and right. Again, this is not a thing that all rappers can do. For every dope, childish Gambino or, freestyle on Sway when he stops and has a conversation with you, there's a whack, oh nah, I can't freestyle. Like, it doesn't matter who it is. But Pun would kill it. One could argue this is the most important aspect of being an MC. Being able to rap anytime, anywhere, against anybody. Pun had that. Not only did he have that, he had the ability to body anybody he went up against. Who else is as lyrically quick or as just intimate with his rhymes like that? No one back then at the time. You even compare him lyrically to some of the greatest of all time, to the M's, to the MF Dooms. Pun holds up. Again, rarefied air. Pun had the ability to stand out in a crowd of just wannabe gangster rappers, especially post of the death of Tupac. He wasn't one of the just Tupac-alikes, one of the rip-offs that came afterwards. Big Pun put some numbers. Don't sleep on it. The 2 albums he did release peaked at number 5 and number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. Capital Punishment and Yeah Baby respectively. And then his highest charting single, Still Not a Player, it peaked at number 24 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 6 on the Billboard Hot R&B and Hip Hop Songs chart. There's not many people that have critical success, platinum selling records, and the rarefied air of being almost universally acknowledged as one of hip hop's greatest wordsmiths. These things all lend itself to the GOAT argument for Pun. The biggest knock, again, against Pun is his lack of a catalogue and his lack of emotional depth. This is something that I believe truly matters. It's the same argument with Biggie. We never got to hear really what his political views were. We never got to hear how he thought about his friends and women and family and God. Truly, visceral tracks like Dear Mama or Cleaning Out My Closet, they don't exactly, cover Pun's catalogue of songs. His music is just, I'm gonna be gangster, doing gangster things. And there's nothing wrong with that. But can you be considered the GOAT if you don't connect emotionally with your listeners? Can you be considered the greatest of all time if you don't show that vulnerable side of you? I don't know. But again, I harken back. If you only have 2 studio albums that you released, and if in those 2 albums there's really only verses of what you truly believe and think and connect to your listeners, can you be considered the greatest? Do you belong in the argument of the greatest of all time? Emotional depth is very important. Even songs today are reflecting this now more than ever. We have songs from Lil Uzi Vert, like EXO Tour Life, detailing a bad relationship and how he was depressed and suicidal. Other rappers like XXXTentacion, they have songs about their dead friends and how this affects them mentally. Songs from Logic talking about suicide and things like that. Your Tupacs, your Eminems, your Jay-Z's, they all have these songs. Some more so than others. The ability to connect on a personal level to your listeners is vastly understated. And it should be brought into consideration more often. But then, usually this argument is countered with Big Pun's lyrical prowess. There is no hyperbole in saying that he is one of the best lyricists of all time. Again, I bring it up. Dead in the middle of Little Italy. If you haven't heard this line, it is arguably the most iconic in hip-hop history. Big Pun in the first verse of Twins ends it with dead in the middle of Little Italy. Little did we know that we riddled 2 middlemen who didn't do diddly. This right here, iconic, amazing. The flow which he speaks it with, the style with it. How in the video it zooms in on his teeth with his grills as he says it, his mouth, the movements, his breath control, especially for a man so large. Songs, lyrical onslaughts like Dream Shatterer. I'm pure adrenaline, art cart, straight to the gut, medicine, raw cure for pain. I coat your brain like polyurethane, simple and plain. I'll explain it in layman's terms. Does having this type of lyrical prowess, is that enough to overcome a lack of a catalogue, a lack of emotional depth, a lack of longevity? Another knock against Pun is that you can argue whether he has that nowadays. Because most times, when you do show his music to people, especially people my age, teenagers, they'll say, yo, this is dope. Who is this? They don't know about Pun like people know about DMX, Snoop, Ice Cube, Tupac, Biggie. Pun to certain groups is iconic, unforgettable. But to the masses, who's Pun? It's always sad when an artist gets cut down in their prime and we don't get to see the full range of things that they are able to give us, even when things get bad. But I'm here to say, if Christopher Lee Rios, Big Pun, the Punisher, can he be considered the greatest rapper of all time? I believe he can. You might say he can't. It's alright. Everyone has their own opinion. But looking at the facts, he stacks up with some of those that we hold in that regard. He has the same amount of albums as Biggie. He's arguably a better lyricist than Big L and Lauryn Hill, and he has more albums than both of them, and they're regularly touted in GOAT conversation. So you tell me, is it wrong to have Pun in this conversation? I don't think so. Again, you might think differently. It's been Maceo.
Go.